Hello, today I'm going to do a channel which is what is humanity accelerating towards? Now, the reason I'm asking this question is because it does seem like things are getting hotter, and I don't mean climatically, I mean in the sort of the human experience, the human field. We have sort of this in growing intensity, and this growing push against the status quo, against the way that things have been for a long time. So for many decades, there has been a general tendency of the direction that things are heading, which is towards globalization, towards consolidation, towards the centralization of all of the things which have authority over what it means to be a human. There's been a diminishment in human sovereignty. There's less privacy. This has been the direction we've been heading in for a long time. But in the last few years, there has been sort of the beginning of a reversal of that. And so moving away from this centralized consolidation and moving towards more of a distribution of authority and to a breaking down of this globalized vision which is held by many who have been the forces behind this continuous push towards that. And now it's becoming more about the individual power, so the power of the individual, and the power of the individual united into a larger group, where we have a sort of a unification of the average man and woman who wish to enact the will of the people rather than to secede to the will of the larger authorities like governments and corporatocracy and so on. And this reversal, it does seem to be picking up momentum, it's picking up speed, and there's sort of increasing turbulence as the forces that have been determining the direction of humanity for a long time are having the rug ripped from under them, and so they are putting in a lot of energy to reverse and upset and remove, sort of quell this uprising of a type and move humanity back to the groove that it was in, which had the inevitable outcome of entire globalization and centralization of most authorities into the hands of a few. So if we're moving away from that, if there is a breakdown of that system of, sort of consolidating everything, consolidating all the authorities and powers into the hands of the few, if there's a breakdown of that, and there's acceleration in the breakdown of that, so where are we accelerating towards? Where are we heading? So I'm going to do a channel on that today. Alright, so let's see what we got. What is humanity accelerating towards? Greetings and thank you for the question. What is humanity accelerating towards? Let us start by creating an understanding of the structure of the one and the purpose of this one thing. Prior to existence, the one existed conceptually. It was an idea of itself. However, there was no experience because as the one thing, there was no other thing which was not the one thing. And so there was no opportunity for contrast, for differentiation, and therefore for experience. The one thing yearned to know itself experientially. What can I be? And so through this process, it individuated itself infinitum, such that now there was the illusion that there was more than one thing. There was one thing which appeared to be not another thing, which appeared to be not another thing, and so on. So now there was the opportunity for this one thing to perceive itself through a certain perspective that were opposing, that were not the one perspective, but now there were many perspectives of the one thing having of itself. And each of these perspectives were a unique individualization, a unique consciousness. And so experience became possible. And the unfoldment of existence through experience is for the one to ultimately know itself to completion experientially. As you are an individuation of the one, you are the one, because there is only one thing. And so all consciousnesses are an aspect of this one thing. And the one thing has the one purpose, which is to know itself through experience. And therefore, it is your purpose also to know thyself, to understand that you are not the mind-body personality that you see in the mirror, but instead you are the individuation of the one, that you are the one. And as you become more realized of that in the physical experience, this is synonymous with the one knowing itself also through experience, knowing itself experientially, the divine purpose fulfilled. So this is the tendency of existence. It is the purpose of existence. There is only one destination. There is only one bullseye. And that bullseye is for the one to know itself to completion through experience. So the momentum of all existence is in this direction. As sentience moves through the different dimensional states, there is an increase in the velocity at which the one knows itself through experience. In the third dimensional matrix, which humanity is in now, the pace of self-recognition, of self-realization, is somewhat less than it is at higher dimensional states, at higher vibratory states. Because it is calibrated to the degree of wakefulness, of self-recognition, of self-realization that is inherent to the earth human. And as this self-realization process of the earth human, of the humanity being continues, then there is a acceleration in the rate of realization. And this acceleration increases the rate at which the human being potentiates the 3D matrix, meaning that the potential for self-realization to become the one having the physical experience awakened in the dream, the lucid dreamer, has been mostly used up. And so for the human being individual and the humanity being, which is what you are part of, this larger being of which you are a cell, in a sense, for it to continue to become increasingly realized, it will require the transition to a higher vibratory matrix, to a matrix which now has an even greater potential in which to expand, because the 3D matrix has been mostly exploited, has been mostly expanded into, has been mostly potentiated. And so it can no longer contain the burgeoning Earth human as it continues its transition into greater recognition that it is the one. So this march, this progression to a higher vibratory state, to a matrix of increasing potential, has an effect on the physical experience, of the experience that the Earth being, the Earth human, and the humanity being has. So there is a compression where the gap between cause and effect becomes increasingly compressed. So the experience of this is an acceleration. So rather than something occurring and then the effect of that being felt sometime later, now what is occurring is there is a cause and then the effect is being felt much sooner. So there is a compression such that the manifestation resulting from your actions is becoming more and more apparent. And this is a diminishment of the mystery of life, of why is this happening? Because now the effect follows the cause so soon that there is a much greater understanding, a greater capacity to realize that the manifestation, the experience you're in, is resulting from a very specific cause, a very specific way of being that you have held in the past. When the sentience, for example, in this discussion, the human being, is still very asleep, is still very unrealized, is still very identified with the mind, the body, the personality, then it would be miscalibrated to be in a matrix where there is a very close relationship between cause and effect. Because when there is a deep entrenchment in the identity this illusory state, this falseness, that you are the mind, the body, the personality. And there is a very limited or absent realization that you are in fact the higher self, and by proxy the one. Then this misunderstanding of self, this misidentification of self, gives rise to much erroneous belief of self. And there is an opaqueness, an inauthenticity to who the 3D human being is in their presence compared to who they actually are, their higher self. And so when there is this pollution, there is this misidentification, there's this misconstruing of who they really are, then the things they believe and the emotions they hold, which arise from those beliefs, are false, are inauthentic. We don't mean to say that they don't truly have these beliefs and they don't truly have those emotions that arise from those beliefs. But what we are saying is the foundation from which those beliefs arise, and then subsequently the emotions which manifest the reality they are in, is a misconstrue of what is true. And so therefore the manifestation which results from this misunderstanding of self is potentially detrimental, is self-harming, is very limiting. And so the human being is caught in their own prison of limitation through this false belief, this misidentification of who they truly are, of believing they are the puny, limited being, when in fact they are the infinite being. And so if the human being, in this state of forgetfulness, of misidentification, misunderstanding of self, were to be in a dimensional matrix of a higher vibration, where the consequence of beliefs, thoughts and emotions was very compressed and occurred very quickly, then the human being would self-destruct, would in a sense destroy itself through this steeped misunderstanding of who they are. And so it's essential that there is enough gap between the cause and the effect, that the effect can be seen approaching, such that there is enough lag, there is enough time, there is enough ahead time, such that the human being can calibrate, can adjust, can weather the storm and navigate, negotiate through the turbulence that they are creating themselves, through the turbulent manifestation arising from the false belief. As humanity, however, is now in a state of increasing wakefulness, of increasing appreciation, that is more than just what it appears in the mirror, that there is some extra dimensionality, then there is now the capacity, through greater self-understanding, to adapt and change at a faster rate, so that there is an allowance, there is a capacity to be in a dimensional matrix where the gap between cause and effect is compressed. So when there is some erroneous belief, giving a rise to erroneous thought and emotionality, which manifests something which isn't desired, which is destructive to the vehicle, to the life that's being lived, there is in the human being, there is now this ability to adapt quickly, to reconfigure self-identity, to draw realization from what is occurring, such that there is a calibration in this universal movement towards greater understanding of self. This momentum, which is inherent to all of existence, the awakening of the One through experience, knowing thyself experientially. So humanity now is reaching the end of the third dimensional cycle and is ready to transition to the next dimensional state. And this transition is going to be a movement into a matrix state where time is of less significance, and the compression will be such that the separation between cause and effect will eventually coalesce and disappear, and effect will be instantaneous. Cause will lead to instantaneous effect. When this occurs, of course, it's only going to be possible to be sustained if the individual human beings and the humanity being have awakened sufficiently in self-understanding that they are almost completely cleansed of misconceptualization of self, that they are, in a sense, the awakened master, realizing they are the higher self, having the physical experience, so that there is now no identity in the vehicle. The vehicle is understood to be a collection of assets, a suit of armour, and the mind is nothing more than an organic artificial intelligence that is inherent to the vehicle, with the intention to be a servant to the higher self, to facilitate the desires of the higher self, and spend its time in silent subjugation, only being activated when it is called upon. And so it is not operating under its own authority, holding beliefs which are erroneous, and giving rise to thoughts and emotions which are out of control, that you, the true being, the higher self, do not have the capacity to rein in, to harness, to control that will. So when the mind has been subjugated in this way, so that it is now at its rightful place in the hierarchy of authority, that it is servant, the true essence of who you are, the higher self, the infinite wisdom, then no longer will it be a source of false belief, giving rise to erroneous thought, and then destructive emotional energy manifesting your destruction. And in this state of wakefulness, then it is now safe and beneficial to be in a matrix state where the separation between cause and effect has become nothing. And so you will be in a realm of instant manifestation, where what it is that you desire is instantly present at the moment you desire it. This is where humanity is heading. And this coalescence of cause and effect will occur eventually as humanity continues to progress through its expansion into the next dimensional realm. There is still some ground to be covered before this is reached. However, this is where humanity is heading, because this is where all existence is heading, as the One awakens and realizes through experience, knowing itself experientially. So the acceleration taking place now in the human field is this process of transitioning into a higher dimensional state, of waking up, of realizing that it is not the finite being which is easily controlled, which is easily corralled, which can be hijacked through the cultural pillars, through a false narrative which exploits this tendency of the unawakened human to be over mental, to be subjugated to the authority of the mind, such that the mind becomes the ultimate purveyor of what one does, behaves, bees. The mind being out of control in a sense. Because you, the true essence, the highest self, are there but asleep, not realizing that you are the highest self, not realizing that you are not the mind, but instead the mind is your servant. And this forgetfulness has been deliberately enhanced. It has been deliberately maintained such that you don't awaken to have this realization that, hang on, there is something else here. There is a presence here, which is an infinite presence, which extends beyond the mind, which surpasses the mind, which in comparison is clearly the master, because the mind is small in its capacities, in its powers, in its authority, compared to this infinite presence that I truly am. This has been suppressed, so that this exploitation, this hijacking of the mind can continue, and you are controlled and maintained and kept still, static, within this 3D matrix, and you don't expand as it is the intent and general persuasion of existence. Because as long as you, the individual, and all human individuals, remain stagnated in their expansion and continue to be slave to their minds, which have been hijacked and exploited, so that your mind becomes the fearful, obedient servant to those that control the narrative, to those that use the cultural pillars to create a false reflection of the world, which impoverishes and diminishes you as a means to elevate and consolidate the wealth and power of the few. This old system of control, of consolidation of the wealth and power through your yoking and exploitation of your mind is falling away. It's disintegrating. And those that have been marching the world towards a final vision, which is complete and total subjugation of humanity into a consolidated, centralized system where all aspects of human life have been consolidated into the hands of the few, and birthrights and liberties which you are entitled to just through the blessing of existing are stripped away. This system is falling apart. It's losing its authority, because as more and more awaken to this growing sense they are more than just what they see in the mirror, that there is something extra dimensional, then it becomes easy to break the spell, to become less engaged by the false narrative which has been hijacking the mind for generations. And this releases you to be swept up in this wave of change, where you are no longer a stagnant mollusk attached to the side of a rock. But now you have broken free and you are swept up in the wave, accelerating towards this change. And this higher vibratory realm where there is a compression. There was originally, when the Earth project was created, a projected timeline. And it was assumed that at this stage in time that there would be a much deeper penetration into this next vibratory, this next dimensional state that humanity is destined to enter. However, what wasn't planned was the entry of opportunists into the human field, which chose to harness humanity as a resource and stagnate intentionally the blossoming, the birthing of the new humanity paradigm. And so what is occurring now, what is in place now, is there is a humanity being, there is the human field, in an energetic state where the energy of the earth and the energy of this region of the cosmos are calibrated to a much more awakened being than the human being is. Because the natural organic progression of awakening has been deliberately stagnated, stifled, suppressed, hijacked. And so there is massive volumes of energy, of change, reservoirs that have been unutilized, that haven't been potentiated. and it is building up like the growing pressure inside a volcano that is yet to erupt, increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. But the plug in the top of the volcano for the human being has been these forces which have deliberately been suppressing the blossoming of the new human, of the awakening of the humanity being. So this energy is present, it's built up, and what is most likely to occur in this unprecedented situation, because from our experience, nowhere before has this occurred the way it is occurring. Because as it was when the Earth Human Project was created, it was going to be a much accelerated timeline for transition from being unawakened to being awakened. It was going to be an unprecedented project in the rapidity, the speed at which this evolution was to occur. And so when the opportunists came into the earth field and chose to exploit the earth human as a resource and suppress this natural organic awakening, it was believed that given the timeline that had originally been envisaged was so compressed that there's no way the project could survive more compression, that the project could be stagnated such that this time for transition was reduced even more than it already was. And so it was a projection that perhaps this project shall never reach its fulfillment, because the original design was already very, very ambitious for a race to go through this transformation in such a compressed time. And now with the arrival of opportunists that have stagnated and for some time cut off and even reversed this evolution of the humanity being, the time available now for this transition to occur from where the humanity being is to where the final vision plans to be is so compressed that not only would it be unprecedented, it would be beyond what many with vast experience existing millions, billions of years believed to be possible. When we say millions, billions of years, we mean that societies that have existed for a very, very long time. And they have observed much of what has occurred in this galaxy and other galaxies. Even they, being as integrated into the One and as believing in the magnificence of the One as they are, even they had some expectation that this could not culminate successfully because of this reduction in time available. But what has become apparent is that the One, in its magnificence, in its awe-inspiring capacities, has been by many underestimated. And this is really saying something, because this is saying that those who have existed for a very long time as a race of beings and seen so much and are so awakened in their high dimensional state to the integration and the oneness and the infinite love of the One, for them even what is going to occur is bordering beyond their expectations. So this acceleration is going to become much, 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 much more rapid, because there is a unification occurring on Earth right now. There is a waking up and realizing that the way of the Earth human has been for a long time not a result of the organic, grassroots, elevated extension of the humanity wisdom, but instead has been a top-down, deliberate suffocation of this birthing of the new human. That there has been a unified malevolence pitting itself against this birth of the new human being. And this awakening is setting the individual human free from the chains of exploitation through the false belief and the over mentality. This return in the human field to a love and trust in God is a return or an increasing recognition of each individual's extra dimensionality, of their higher self perspective, of their infinite love qualities. And this is breaking the shackles and freeing the human being to explode into a new paradigm. This is rapidly increasing, and this is awakening the sleeping giant, the humanity being. Humanity is coming together, unified, integrated, the infinite circuitry being awoken from its dormancy through the pulsation of the one love, which connects the all, which is the one. And so now there is this situation where the human field, the humanity being, is going to transition into this higher dimensional state in a much briefer time. And from a mathematical sense, it is now an asymptotic relationship where the human awakening is accelerating at an accelerating rate, such that there is approaching a point where the awakening will become so rapid that it will transcend what is possible in the 3D matrix. It will not be containable. The 3D matrix, in a way, is going to be bust open. This is a metaphorical description. The 3D matrix will bust open, and humanity will explode forth into a higher dimensional state as a higher energetic being. And because this transition will not occur slowly, but will instead occur very, very rapidly, it will, through a series of events, be the catalytic moment that sets in motion a cascade of energetic shift which will pass through each human that has moved away from the darkness, polarized to the light, through the humanity being, through the earth being, through the solar system being. And there will be a release of this unpotentiated energy, which was intended to be used incrementally over a long time, but has been instead reservoired, has been building up, has been unutilized, because the Earth human's evolution into its high dimensional state has been deliberately stagnated. It shall be unleashed in a moment, in a flash. And this cascade of energetic release will excite the star in the center of your solar system. And its excitation will be uncontainable. And so instead of this cascading effect occurring over a very long time, such that the energy increase in your central star can be released slowly, incrementally, such that the inpouring of energy into the earth field, into the DNA of every individual human, occurs more controlled in a slower way. This opportunity has been denied, it's past. Now what's going to occur instead is this energy build-up, this cascade, and this energy release which engulfs the sun, your central star, will be released in a flash. Instead of it being released over many generations, it will be released in a moment. There will be a flash from your central star. And when this flash occurs, there will be an instantaneous shift into fifth dimensionality. But it won't be an instantaneous shift of your energy field into the fifth dimensionality, because it is already there, energetically. You're already present in the fifth dimension, but you are anchored through physicality in the third dimension. And so it is like a husk. Your physicality, your third dimensionality, is like a husk. And this husk is anchoring you in the 3D matrix. And instead of having this slow and progressive reduction in physicality, in density, such that over generations the human being becomes more and more fifth dimensional in nature, instead this is going to occur very, very rapidly. And so instead of it being a generational event, it's going to be an event that occurs over moments. And so your third dimensional husk, which is in a sense an occlusion, it is a false belief of self, is an illusory representation of who you are, will be burnt away. It will be disintegrated. And what shall be left will be the energetic, the fifth dimensional aspect of who you are, the wakefulness that you already have in the fifth dimensional state. This what shall be left. And so it will be a rebirth as a fifth dimensional being. But in reality what it shall be is a remembering, a realization that you are a fifth dimensional being. it will be a waking up to see that you are already fifth dimensional, that you are already in this higher dimensional state, this higher vibratory state. And what has actually been occurring is that you have been wearing a mask, a 3D mask, which you have mistakenly believed to be you. And when it is burnt away, disintegrated, you will be a being of much less density. You shall still be physicalized in a sense, but from the perspective of a 3D being, you will no longer exist. You will appear to be gone, because you will no longer be perceptible to those who remain as 3D beings. So some who will, with all their might, fight against this transition to the high dimensional state and believe that they have been saved as they corral themselves in underground facilities, waiting for it to be possible to emerge back onto the surface. But it is unlikely they will ever be able to emerge back onto the surface as long as they continue to be three-dimensional beings, because the surface will be a higher energetic atmosphere. It will be like a plasma, and only high energy beings will be able to survive it. Fifth dimensional beings. And those fifth dimensional beings, from the perspective of those who remain third dimensional, will be as ghosts, will be undetectable. And once there's entry into this fifth dimensional state, in this higher vibratory state, which those on your planet who have been discussing for some time call the fifth dimension, in this high dimensional state where there is less physicality, where the mask has been pulled away, so now there is realization of the self. There is no more false belief giving rise to erroneous thoughts and destructive emotions manifesting turbulence and tribulation in your life. This will no longer be part of the human experience. And because now there will be this alignment between self-perception and the truth of who you are, it will become possible to be in an environment where the gap between cause and effect have been greatly diminished, such that the effect will be in the way it is experienced instantaneous, appear to be instantaneous. And humanity will begin its next phase of expansion into greater understanding that it is the One, as it potentiates this new field of infinity, more of the infinity that lays ahead of it in this fifth dimensional paradigm, until eventually, over a very long time, this fifth dimensionality again will be fully potentiated. And then it will be time for the humanity being to transition to the next energetic realm, to the next vibratory matrix dimensional state. So once again, there is more of the potential of the One is opened up in front of the humanity being, waiting to be utilized, potentiated on this march towards the full realization that you are, in fact, the One having an experience of itself through the unique perspective which is you. In other words, the fulfillment of divine purpose. In closing, we say, there is no requirement or service coming from being fearful. It is part of a divine progression, a divine intent. And in the ultimate perspective, you are an invulnerable being. You cannot be harmed. But you can be awakened. And this is the blessing of becoming more of the love of the Infinite One. And as such, becoming a being of greater peace, harmony, bliss, joy, and contentment. So there is only good coming your way. Enjoy the ride, remain in peace, and contribute to this momentum of the One with your love and your kindness and your empathic connection to all humans, regardless of how they present in the lifetime they're living, because you understand they are the love of the One, playing their unique role for this one purpose, which is for all existence to return to love. Thank you.